So I'm joined here by David Lewis of Audiencenet. David, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us in what would have been a presentation today. But for the benefit of those people who didn't meet you in Barcelona, tell us a little bit about what Audiencenet does.
Yeah, essentially what Audiencenet does, it has global reach for online research. And we do segmentations of markets, but we don't stop there. We then invite people into the Audiencenet community so that we're actually able to then recontact them. And in fact, in Barcelona, it's very interesting because a couple of the GTMC member companies actually said that they're very interested in some of the data and wanted to ask some more questions. So we were able to go back to exactly the sort of targeted segments of that research and have an ongoing dialogue of them.
So you've produced this document, The Voice of the Business Rail Traveller.
Yeah.
What were the sort of headline findings that you got from that?
Well, one of the things Paul said, do keep tabs on, because we were going to be asking questions on HS2, is the younger generation. So it was quite interesting just to look at how 18 to 29-year-olds compared with the respondents across the different age groups.
When you were looking at specifically business travel, what was the highlight? What was it that people were specifically looking for more than anything else?
One of the things that really emerged strongly was the ability to work on the move on the train, and it was across the whole respondent group. I think something like 93% of people are working at some point in their business travel journey. Over half are working for most or all of their journey. And when we're talking about what do people want more of, or what do they want to see as improvements both on board and at the station, it's all around fast speed internet connection, the availability of plug points to use their connected devices, and as I think you would expect, the younger generation again really kind of over-indexing there in terms of their desire to be able to work on the move and to be able to use connected devices.
Now, you mentioned younger generation. What sort of age group are you talking about there specifically?
Really, it was the 18 to 29-year-olds. And when I was discussing this project with Paul at the outset, we said, well, let's look at the real benefactors of HS2, because a lot of this survey was concerning HS2. And in fact, it was really interesting that over the business rail travelling community, they had 56% support for HS2. We only had a quarter of the sample rejecting it outright, because there was quite a proportion that also was still wavering. We did this survey amidst quite a bit of negative publicity, so I think that's also an interesting thing to bear in mind. They had 19% saying they don't really know, a quarter rejecting HS2, 56% in support.
David, was there anything particular you asked them about franchise or anything like that? Any research questions around that?
Sure. It was interesting that considerably more respondents actually felt that the awarding of 10-year franchises encourages complacency amongst rail operators.
What, they don't think they need to do anything because they've got 10 years in power?
Far more people felt that it encourages complacency than investment.
Did they say, therefore, what length of tenure would be?
No, I mean, that wasn't something that was covered. There was lots of support for competition on rail lines, so right. The idea of more than one operator on a line, lots of support. By far the majority of the sample were in favour of competition on rail lines, but there was this suggestion that a 10-year franchise actually can be a negative aspect. There was something like 70% of the sample actually felt that there's also an argument for some lines to be kept in public ownership, so that it's interesting, but it wasn't all about competition.
But it was quite clear amongst that group that actually competition was very important as far as they were concerned.
Yeah, and a profit motive drives efficiency as a concept, but maybe 10-year franchises are a little bit too long.
Now, I'm sure you didn't have any preconceived ideas as to what you were going to find out, but was there anything that surprised you at all from the research?
One thing that really surprised me was the number of people. Obviously, we defined this as business travel, so 50 plus miles on business from your normal place of work. But we also we took the opportunity to find out who's using rail to commute to work. It was exactly 50% of the sample were using rail as a daily commute to and from work. Over 70% of younger people, in fact, younger people again less supportive of company cars, see less of a future for company cars compared to the sample as a whole. But the thing that staggered me from the research was all but 7% of people are having to stand on their daily commute at some point. And it's something like over half of them having to stand very regularly. And of the people that do stand, it was 79% for more than half of their journey.
So what does that tell us, do you think?
Well, I think that gives a big appetite for the need for greater capacity in terms of rail travel.
Brilliant. Look, I know you've got a lot of rich information in this report, and I'm pretty sure I'm safe in saying that GTMC will be sharing this research with those people who are due to be here today. Sure. Is there anything to close with, if you like, that you want to say about the research and the piece that you did?
I just think it's useful to point out that we've produced a nice double-sided leaflet that's very easy to read
nice
through.
graphics.
Some very nice graphics. We produced one for the Barcelona conference. It's just a good idea if people get hold of one of those, because it gives the headlines in a very easily digestible way, and there are some interesting things coming out.
Look, thank you very much indeed. And as David just said, there's a lot of useful information in the voice of the business rail traveller, which, as I say, GTMC will make sure you get hold of these bits of information that should have been handed out today. David, thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.